All right, moving on. The highest ranked question goes to one of these Tiemans brothers, part of the collective hive mind out there, and I think they already might be in. I'm not sure. Maybe they're already in. They might be out. I don't know. Things change very quickly. They probably were like the first ones in, but now they're like out, and they don't even know they're out. But anyway, the top ranked question was, if you could live in a movie genre, what would it be? Sci-fi, Western, Cold War, thriller? Well, sure would be horror. I'd just love to live in a horror movie. I obviously it'd be science fiction, and you know, I haven't seen Tomorrowland yet. I don't think it's out yet, but there's a lot about the trailer for Tomorrowland that looks a lot like Ejectia, which was a project we did back in the Eject days. Some of you were part of that, and it was about 2007. We were going to make like an online city where people could live and then have all these different things that they could go to. It really was going to be kind of fun, and I just didn't have the resources to get it done. But kind of a group wiki kind of a thing where everybody brings their, expertise to the thing. And the reason I bring that up is because a lot of the graphic work I was doing at the time is very reminiscent of Tomorrowland, and I'm just going to use Tomorrowland as an example of the sci-fi thing. I think the reason it would be sci-fi for me, in fact, I know the reason it'd be sci-fi for me, is because there's a lot of people out there, I'm sure a lot of you are like this, who are natural-born explorers, and the curse of our time is that we live in a time when there's nothing left to explore. We've got nothing to explore. It is true there are parts of the Amazon and certainly the ocean beds and all the rest of it that has never really been, trodden by the white man. But the fact of the matter is, you can't go anywhere on this earth where there's not, cell phone coverage. You're not going to find anything new. There's nothing new out there. And there's also, I know this is going to cause problems in Europe, which is why I'll say it twice. There's nothing better out there. There's nothing better. There's nothing more advanced. There's no world out there that would be to me what America would be if I lived in, Nigeria or Guatemala or Thailand. I mean, I would like to see a society that's much more advanced than the one I live in, and there isn't one. It'd be kind of cool. Be neat to see things I hadn't seen before. Be neat to go places I hadn't seen before. Especially be cool to go to places where no one had ever been, where no man has gone before. That would be it. And that's a big part of my makeup, and I suspect a part of your makeup too, is, we're frontier people, and it's in our genes, and we want to go explore frontier, and there aren't any. So you get the sci-fi universe and you have new frontiers, and I really think that's it. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole Star Trek original series versus Next Generation, other than to say what I like most about the original series, and especially the exploits of this guy on the wall over here, and those hard to see in the zoom, but those are, the top one is the original series Enterprise, and the middle one is the movie Enterprise, and the bottom one is it's not the second movie Enterprise, it's a fan-based Enterprise. It's the best-looking hybrid of what the first series Enterprise should look like. But see that guy over there, he got to see new things every day, or every week anyway, and that would have been cool. And that's what wasn't in the Next Generation. It was an established universe. The original series, you go where no one has gone before, see things you've never seen before. Hey, look, here's a planet where one side of the people's face is black and the other side is white. It's ridiculous, but it's different. And a lot of it wasn't ridiculous. A lot of it was really deep and really, 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 really cool. So, it would be sci-fi for sure there, Zechariah. And some of it's dark, There's a lot of sci-fi worlds I wouldn't particularly want to live in. Blade Runner's a pretty dark place, although LA's starting to feel more like Blade Runner every day. By the way, Blade Runner, I think, was set in 2017, so we got 2 years to get those flying cars in action. There's a great movie that not a lot of people have seen called Outland. It's a Sean Connery sci-fi movie, and it's basically High Noon. In fact, it's exactly High Noon, set in a mining camp on one of the moons of Jupiter. That was interesting. The original Alien was a great movie, and Aliens, the second one, is my favorite film by a wide margin. It's not the greatest movie ever made, it's just my favorite. And that is a gritty kind of a future that's a little nasty. No one's ever done a future where capitalism reigns supreme. I might have to do that myself, because it's just not possible for them to get that around their heads. It's either, it's a totalitarian future where the company runs everything, or they don't talk about government at all. It's maybe it's a dystopia, but it's not. No one's ever done a world where capitalism is good and happy, everybody's working and getting paid. I've often thought about this. I'm a big defender of capitalism, needless to say, and there's an old statement about government. I think it was Winston Churchill who said democracy is the worst form of government known to man, except for all the others. And you can kind of make that case about capitalism. It's the worst economic system in the world, except for all the others. I don't see many disadvantages to capitalism, but there are some. First of all, the name capitalism is not a good name. It was apparently, somebody told me not too long ago, it was invented by the Marxists to make it something that sounded like it was out of reach. You had to be big fat money bags guy, big fat guy with a top hat and a vest and a gold watch on a chain, and you had to hold up two big fat bags of money, then you could be a capitalist. So the idea that you could never, just get into the game just by working hard, that was what they wanted you to believe, but it's utter nonsense. It'd be kind of cool to do that. Somebody just mentioned 2001, which is obviously on the back wall back there. The hardware in 2001 is fantastic, and one of the reasons that the hardware in 2001 looks so good is two things that they had going for them. First of all, one thing that they had going for them was really the same thing. They made the movie before computer graphics came along. Now that meant that the models that they used had to be fantastic, and if you watch 2001: A Space Odyssey today, it holds up so well. That ship still looks better than anything I've ever seen on the screen. The original Discovery, the full-scale Discovery, I want to say was 12 or 14 feet long. It was absolutely enormous. And this is something that it's why I'm happy to do this show business show. There are people who give you probably a better explanation about this. That doesn't seem likely. There's a reason that model was so big. They wanted it that big. Stanley Kubrick wanted it that big so that he could get all of the little detail on there. Those little, what's the word? Is it squeebles? No. Greebles, something like that. There's a word for these little boxes and little conduits and tubes, greelies, something like that. And there's something in CG and also in models. But Kubrick and Discovery and the models in 2001 were the first models that I'm aware of that used very, very small little details to give you an impression of the scale of the thing. So you'd see little boxes, little ribs, boxes, fan vents, ducts, all this other stuff. And it broke up the surface, because otherwise the lunar lander thing, the Ares, the Orion, the Ares, would be just a sphere. It would look like a toy. But because it put so many little details on it, little handhold things and boxes and vents, it tricked the eye into thinking that it was real because it had detail on the surface. And that was a first. So the model work in 2001 means that those things hold up forever. I get so easily distracted. The reason Discovery was so big was they wanted to pack it full of those little details. But the problem was, this is a depth of field issue. And some of you know about cameras, understand this, but others of you don't. See if I can explain this as clearly as I can. If I have a 1 foot long model or a 5 foot long model or even a 12 foot long model, let's just say a 12 foot long model, and I hold up an iPhone and I take a picture of it, the front of it may be in focus, or the back of it will be in focus, at least with a traditional camera, but not all of it will be in focus because it's right in front of you. It's 12 feet away from your face or your eye, or it's 10 feet away or whatever, 5 feet away. And so the front of the ship is much closer to you than the back of the ship. Now, when you take in a picture of the Queen Mary at sea, let's say, coming towards you at sea, the Queen Mary may be a mile or two away, and it's only a fraction of a mile long. Because you're looking at it with a long lens, with a telescopic lens or with binoculars, or when your eye is focused on it like that and kind of looking at the thing like that, it basically means that the front of the ship and the back of the ship are both in focus at the same time. If you look at the Queen Mary standing right next to it, the front's in focus, or the back is, depending on what your eye's doing. But if the Queen Mary is a couple miles away at sea, or a mile away, or some distance away, it's all at far focus, so the back of the ship and the front of the ship are both in focus at the same time. That's what you have to remember. Now, the way to achieve that in film, when you had film in cameras, was you had to have a very, very, very high f-stop. You had to really squeeze that camera lens down, the iris down almost to a pinhole. And that gave you that deep focus. But the problem was the camera aperture is now so small to get that deep focus that you need incredibly long exposure times. And they would do exposures of like almost a minute or something. It's an incredible long time to have an iris open. They just did stop motion, just controlled it and just moving along, and it's like long frame times, but man, it looked great. And the other reason the 2001 stuff looks so good is because their displays, their cockpit displays, were not done with computer graphics. They were hand-drawn. It's just barely possible to see the bottom one right there. That's nothing but the two guys in the front of the Orion cockpit, and they've got that boxes, rotating boxes. I watched that a couple days ago, and it still looks great. And it looks great because it was hand-drawn. All of it was hand-drawn, and I think it was drawn by some Disney guys. And it looks great because it's so finely detailed. Ironically and pathetically, several years after 2001 was 1968, so this might have been around 88, 89, 90, 88, 89 seems about right. So 10 years after 2001 comes out, 2010 comes out. And the models looked okay in 2010, but they had computer graphics by then. They had like Apple IIc computer graphics. And they went from these beautiful, elegant diagrams to these blocky, heavily aliased, god-awful, chunky, rotten, nasty computer graphics, and it looked incredibly primitive, and it was dated. By the time the movie came out, it was dated. They used real computer graphics, so it looked like crap. So we don't want to get into the space so much as kind of straight on the artistic side for this tonight, but that's an interesting thing. By the way, a little point, but an important point for those people who appreciate the details. 2001, if you look at the screen displays, just watch the movie and look at the screen displays, you're going to see that sometimes HAL would have like 12 or 16 panels right in front of a HAL station. And if you look at these panels, they're all animated, they're all in motions, they're all graphs, they're all equations, not just nonsense stuff running up there. It's actual equations, orbital dynamics, and bell curves and all that other stuff. But the thing that impressed me the most was that each one of the displays was broken down into a number of categories. There were at least 6 or 7. And each one of them had a 3-letter identifier. So HIB would be for hibernation, and it had a certain color. So all the hibernation displays would say HIB in the corner. And NAV, I think, for nav, NUC for nuke, probably for the nuclear reactor. It was so well thought out, incredibly well thought out. And a little inside story in 2001, because we get off the rails, but that's what the show's all about, is getting off the rails. The movie was shot in England at the big studios over there, and they had hired a guy to be the mission controller. Hired a British guy to be the mission controller, and they had an Air Force tech advisor on the show, and this guy could not get it right. He couldn't get it right. Finally, Kubrick had to move mountains, and I mean, this was apparently a big deal. It wasn't trivial. It took him weeks and weeks and weeks. But he finally got permission to get the actual guy to come in and do it on camera. He might have had to get him into the British Actors Union or something like that. But the guy on the other end of the Discovery transmissions is an actual Air Force controller. And even to me, and I listen to this kind of talk all the time, it seems way over the top, but it's like, he's like, Roger, X-ray Delta 1, this is Mission Control. Roger, your plans for your Alpha Echo 35 unit. Sorry about that, fellas. It's a little over the top, but it sounds good. Yeah, 2010 was garbage. 2001 was classic. That's why I have 2001 on the back wall there. Anyway, enough of that. Thanks, Zach. Good to hear from you. Patrick Dillon wants to know, he says, you're given a $50 million budget to remake, update a movie, one that was first released at least 30 years ago. Which one do you pick? Let me think. Thank God. We just made it. If you'd asked me this question, I think I would have missed it. I would remake Buckaroo Banzai. I want to remake that movie so bad. I want to make it so much. And I kind of am. Big Bat Problems is basically Buckaroo Banzai's attitude anyway. The thing I like so much about Buckaroo Banzai was just the competence of it and the ability to take guys who were nuclear physicists and brain surgeons and make them cool. And the way they made them cool was really pretty simple. Well, they had great casting, first of all. Peter Weller when he was young, and I don't think Jeff Goldblum was cool, but Jeff Goldblum was so nerdy he actually became cool. He was dressed up in his stupid, cowboy outfit. But Buckaroo Banzai was about extremely capable, very capable people who were not only brain surgeons and rocket scientists, but they were also rock and roll musicians. And they were dressed in the height of 80s fashion, which dates it a little bit today because they were such a statement. but that the greatest credits of all time is in Buckaroo Banzai. If you haven't seen him yet, go to YouTube when we're done and watch Buckaroo Banzai end credits. I think Good Version is the one that says Good Version on it. It's just killer. And these guys are in incredibly fashionable clothes. And even today they looks like 80 clothes, but they look like killer 80 clothes. Really great. And each one of them had their own specialty, and there's a lot of that in Big Bad Problems. The reason I'd want to make Buckaroo Banzai again is because it's just so interesting. And they didn't have a lot of money to do it the first time around. But you could do so much more with the alien invasion, and not to give away too much of Big Bad Problems, but the thing I would do if I remade Buckaroo Banzai would be to do what I'm going to do in Big Bad Problems, which is I'm going to include everything in the universe that works today and is practical. I don't want CG gadgets, because I think I have a whole conversation. I mean, we really could do 3 hours about CG. Maybe we should. But what I've come to... look, I'm a guy who used to have a computer graphics company. I mean, I did computer graphics effects back in the early to mid 90s, and I'm a big fan of them. But when people depend on them, you get the Star Wars trilogy, right? You get the Phantom Menace and the Attack of the Clones, this antiseptic, silly, not real universe, and you get tires that come right by the camera. You never get that shot in real life, and so when somebody gives you a tire coming right by the camera, or a jet that flies 6 inches away from you or something, and the director's like idiots saying, that's really exciting. No, it takes you out of the movie. You may not even know you're being taken out of the movie, but you know that shot can't be real because jets can't get that close to the camera. So in any event, I just think that I want practical stuff. And there's a website out there which you may not know about, and I can't believe I haven't said it earlier. It's really fun. It's called DudeIWantThat.com. DudeIWantThat.com has got all kinds of really cool little gadgets, all sorts of weird stuff, incredible weapons, including a personal flamethrower. And so this Big Bad Problems has got flamethrowers, personal flamethrowers, and it's got these pump action shotguns, and there's like a hunting knife, just a regular knife, little hole in the tip, and there's a little CO2 cartridge that goes in the handle. When you stab somebody, then you push the button, and it blows the CO2 cartridge and blows them up. Stuff like that is just neat, and it's got to be practical because it's got to look real. And if it's not real, if you've got some kind of electronic CG kind of thing, like a tricorder or something, then you're not in a real movie anymore. There's so much cool stuff out there. It's like the world is coming to an end, but it's going to end with cool gear. The thing that I'm interested in is there's just so much neat tech. You get this room, this boarded up house full of these bats, and they know they're in there. And instead of, walking in there and taking their casualties, they just chuck one of these little Brookstone, little tracked vehicles or little wheeled vehicles, and they're steering it with their iPhone, and they're watching the TV image coming back on their iPhone, and they got drones, doing surveillance of the back windows. It's just cool. It's just neat. And I want to put as much of that in there. So if I were to do the Buckaroo Banzai thing again, I would have these guys be masters of tech. They'd be jamming signals. They'd have apps. They'd have everything. I'd get it right up to the present day, and I'd really have a lot of fun with it. So that's be what the movie I could remake after the last 30 years. So anyway,